Welcome to Money Clearly, the podcast that explains everyday money without the mystery. I'm Bridget Gale, and each week we break down the money questions that come up in real life, at work, at the bank, and at home, so you can understand what's actually happening with your money. Today, we're talking about verification at checkout and why some questions sound like money decisions when they aren't. So, you're at the grocery store. The cashier finishes scanning your items and turns the screen towards you. You've swiped your debit card and the terminal asks a question: debit or credit? You pause just for a second. There's a line behind you. The cashier's waiting. The screen is waiting. So you pick one. Not because you're confident, but because you don't want to hold things up. The transaction goes through, the receipt prints, you leave with your groceries. Nothing went wrong, but the moment sticks with you longer than it should. Because that question, well, it felt like a money decision, and you weren't sure you made the right one. You didn't do anything unusual. You paid the same way you always do. But still, the question lingers. What did that choice really mean? Let's pause on that for a second. That question at the checkout, debit or credit, felt like a money decision. But it wasn't. In the last episode, we talked about debit and credit as a real financial distinction, because it does matter whose money is being used. But that's not what this moment is about. What you are being asked to choose here was not whose money would be used. You've already made that decision with the card that you picked to swipe. With a debit card, your bank account is being used either way. That's what makes this question, debit or credit, so confusing in this moment. No matter which option you select, the money still comes from the same checking account. What you were actually being asked to choose was how the system should verify that you're allowed to use the card. Verification is the banking system's way of confirming that the person using the card is allowed to be using the card. That's all. It's not deciding whose money is being used. It's not changing how authorization works, and it's not deciding what happens later. It's just choosing how your identity is confirmed in that moment. Sometimes that confirmation happens with a PIN, a personal identification number, which is a short numeric code that you set up with your bank when you open the account or when you activate the card. You might have chosen this PIN at an ATM during your account setup, or maybe even the first time you used the card. The PIN isn't about moving money. It's simply one way that the banking system checks. Is the person holding this card the person who's allowed to use it? When you enter a PIN, you're confirming identity directly. Your PIN should be a secret that only people allowed to use the card would know. If you don't use a PIN, there are other ways to confirm the same thing. But either way, the payment itself follows the same path afterward. The payment doesn't change, the money doesn't change, and the authorization doesn't change. By asking debit or credit, only the verification step changes. You'll notice you don't hear this question when you use a credit card, so the system doesn't ask you to choose. That's why this checkout prompt feels so misleading. It sounds like you're being asked to make a financial choice, when really you're being asked to help the system verify your identity. Nothing about your purchase was at risk. Nothing about your money shifted. The awkwardness didn't come from choosing wrong. It came from being asked a system question that sounds like a money decision without being told that it isn't. That's the disconnect. But now you know the context of the question. The bottom line is, when you use your debit card, the question, debit or credit, isn't about payment. It's simply about verification. Let's address a common misconception about this topic. A very common idea people hear is that running debit as credit is safer than using a PIN. That belief didn't come out of nowhere. When debit cards first became common, the PIN really was the main proof of identity, and using it as little as possible in public felt safer. Over time, the money movement systems we have changed. Verification methods expanded, and our networks no longer rely on the PIN the same way that people were taught years ago. But the warning stuck. This conclusion spread socially, but now this is an old risk story that doesn't apply much to our new systems. Choosing how to process your debit card is a verification routing choice. And knowing this will help you feel more confident when you're swiping your debit card and answering debit or credit. Thanks for listening to Money Clearly. As always, hearing what's confusing helps me know what to cover in future episodes, so please leave me a comment. In the next episode, we're talking about payment apps and why seeing a balance there doesn't always mean the same thing as seeing a balance at a bank. New episodes come out weekly. So until next time, take care of your money so it can take care of you. This podcast is for educational purposes only and isn't financial advice. Always consider your own situation or talk to a qualified professional before making financial decisions.